and that, you know, has inspired me, and has inspired a lot of my friends actually too. I was shown you by one of my good friends. We were all sitting around, and he's like, guys, I just got to show you something. And he threw it up on the TV, and he showed like your segment of how you started, what your mission is, and then it was the first one that I saw was when you went up to that guy ice fishing, and then he invited you back to their place. I was like, who is this guy? So I started following you, and I was just like, just in awe. And I don't have TikTok, but I follow you on Instagram, and so I've just appreciated so much of your content and everything that you've put out. So with that being said, why did you start? Why did you start this? What brought you to go around and ask people if they were happy?
I mean, it's a question I get all the time. Why did I start doing this documentary? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. And that's honestly the first time I admitted it. I suppose the answer is more of like, why did I start making films in the first place? And that has a lot to do with my childhood. You know,
Right.
It's something that I was called to do ever since I was a kid. But, you know, I like the real answer, the truth, if you want to know the truth,
Mm-hmm.
it happened so naturally. Everything was planned, but nothing that was planned happened. But
Yeah.
what did happen was a million times better than what I planned.
I
And
love that.
while it was happening, I was like, why isn't anything going to plan? And now I realize there was a plan at work that I was totally unaware of that was a million times better than anything I could have even imagined. So why did I do it? I don't know. Why did I start filmmaking? That's a totally other question.
Now, do you edit all your videos, or do you have somebody that does that for you? Or
I edit all my videos, but I did start the Are You Happy Creator program, where if there are any creators, any editors, anybody who records, anybody who's ever taken a picture, there's really no gatekeeping, can email me at info@happypeople.me if they want to go out and interview people in their city or edit some of the videos that I've shot or they could shoot. So I've opened up a creator program, and I've got about 10 people so far. They're out there all around the world shooting, and they'll be editing, with time. But right now it's just me.
That's really awesome. So then basically you've started a community with what you're doing and allowing. I think I've even seen a couple of them actually, because there was an Australian guy, I believe, and
Yes.
I saw one or two of his, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. So that is what you're doing. You're starting a community with it.
Yeah. Well, I'm starting a community of content creators for sure. And it's called the Are You Happy Creator Program. And if you want to be one, you could email at info@happypeople.me. And that kid from Australia, I was looking at his stuff and I was like, oh, this is pretty good. And then I'm like, why don't you edit something for me? And he edits this video that's straight out of Are You Happy, easily could get 1 million views, easily could go viral. And I'm like, oh, I want this kid to be legit. Like, I want him to edit more of my videos. So I was talking to him. I'm like, well, I was talking to him about signing him on. And I'm like, by the way, Gideon, how old are you? He's like, well, I'm about to turn 16. And I'm like, you're 15. And he's like, he's a prodigy. He's like, he reminds me of myself, because I was also 15, like shooting stuff, so he gets it.
That's awesome. So what is your goal with starting that community? What is your goal with building that?
So the goal is to put the show on kind of on autopilot.
Okay.
Right now, like, I am a slave to my desk. I can't grow the show. I can't make merch better than this. My hands are kind of tied by the rope of time.
Okay.
And I'm trying to um, create a community, bring more people in, highlight voices from all around the world, but at the same time, put the show on autopilot so I could QC my merch, which I can't do now. Like obviously you can see the yellow is too, it's too light compared to the white. That, like, if I had more time, I would have been able to QC that and say, oh, that's no good. Make the yellow darker. Luckily, this is a production sample. And,
Right.
I got the yellow darker and people could buy the merch. But, it's those sort of things. I'm trying to free up time so I could grow the show and eventually make a feature-length film.
Awesome. Holy. And so you said that you started filming when you were younger and now wanting to make a feature film with that as like a full documentary. So then let me ask you this. What was your childhood like? Something that you mentioned before. What was your childhood really like, and how did it inspire you to start doing what you're doing now?
So my childhood was pretty good. As a young kid, I lived in Albania
Okay.
for a couple years, and I went back every summer. So we have a home there. That was a huge part of my life, and being there so young, doing kindergarten there, and going there every year really affected my culture, my language, the way I viewed the world. It wasn't just America. I knew that America was a country of many other countries,
Yeah.
and it had its own standing within the world. I understood that concept at a very young age, and at least the fundamental concept of that, and that just multiplied in my understanding as I grew older. And so I never took anything for granted here. I understood, culture, and I understood these different things from a young age. And honestly, around the age of 6 or 7, I picked up a VHS camera that my parents had lying around the house. And the zoom function was all the way zoomed in. I didn't know how to operate the camera, but I hit record and it was all the way zoomed in. And I was recording. It was basically a blur of colors. And after I finished recording, I plugged the camera into our TV with the 3-cord VGA cable.
Yeah.
And I watched what I had recorded off the tape. And it was like, I didn't know what I was feeling then, but I cried watching this, just a little kid. And I didn't know it then, but that was the beginning of a journey dedicated to filmmaking. And I went about it with all these different routes. I was really into writing. I was really into acting. I was really into directing. I was really into editing. And all my free time was spent watching interviews with my favorite filmmakers, rewatching movies, watching movies, on mute on my TV so I could focus more on the picture, watching movies without the picture, just the sound.
Wow.
I spent summers watching the entire Inside the Actor studio with James Lipton, just obsessed, and it just never stopped. I went to college, majored in film. I worked my butt off to graduate early. I had an internship while I was in college. I worked my butt off there. They hired me. They hired me before I even graduated. And, it was all good. I put in a lot of work,
Wow. That's incredible. And so if you don't mind me asking, how old are you now?
I'm 26.
So 26. So that has been, up until now, that has been what you've been focusing on, and that is your journey that brought you to this point. And now with Are You Happy? You're developing like this incredible story arc, this incredible line of getting these amazing reactions out of people. And that's all, built up over time. And you talked about the journey, and even though, and tell me this, did you cry when you saw the video? Were you crying because you were disappointed, or were you crying because,
I was I don't know why, overcome with emotion, excited about having just recorded something and seeing it right away. It definitely wasn't because I was disappointed. I was enthralled. I was excited.
Wow. I love that. I love that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
So with that all being said, and you sharing that with us about your childhood, now I kind of want to get into how you approach this. Like how do you feel when you're about to ask a completely random stranger if they're happy or not?
Every
How does
single
that make
time.
you feel?
Yeah, dude, great question. Parker, every single time I interview somebody, my heart beats out of my chest. I'm always nervous. I'm always like, he's gonna come. Uh, I'm always nervous to talk to strangers. I'm always very shy, but as soon as I start, all that fades away, and then I start getting really into it with them. And then once I do one person, it's much easier for me to interview other people as well. But that first person, I made a short documentary called "Get Out the Car," which is on my Are You Happy YouTube, and it's basically about my experience making this documentary with this anxiety of speaking with people I don't know. And it's something like social anxiety is something I've dealt with. It's not a crippling fear of speaking to strangers, but it's definitely a legit fear
Mhm.
that I had to overcome before this documentary. And definitely during it. And it's still something I struggle with.
Wow. And that's kind of one of the things that I found really interesting about your content is like you're literally going up to anyone. It doesn't matter who they are. Like I cried when I watched you ask that the blind fellow
Mm.
and his story too. And I'm like, how do you just like find these people like that you just come and talk to and I even showed my mom that one too. She started getting teary eyed. And it was just the thing that makes me so interested is that it's just a question, are you happy? And how much that and how it captivates the people that you're asking it to, almost like you kind of see them, like you see some people obviously, and I'm sure you've gotten it a lot where people are like, yeah dude, I'm happy, and they walk away, or like,
Yeah.
no I'm not, and they walk away. But when you actually get the people who like stop and want to share with you why they're happy or why they're not happy, I'm so fascinated by that. And why do you think that is? Why do you think the question, are you happy, is so impactful for a lot of people?
Great question. I think it's two reasons. The reason why the question, are you happy, is so impactful is kind of two-pronged. The first is its simplicity. 3 words, a lot of meaning packed into it. The second is it forces you to look back on your entire life, analyze it, and its effect on your current happiness. And it forces that process within seconds. And you see that happening on the person's face, but it's like a year of therapy thrust onto a person right away. And then that's why you see people kind of in shock when I ask them. They're like, well, and they're kind of searching. What you see is them searching for something outside, but what they're really doing is searching within.
Wow. I love that. That's and what you just said is so true, because you can, and how like again, coming back to the older gentleman, the blind man, like, you know it, for somebody to ask, like, I can't even imagine for somebody to come up to him and ask him that question, and for him to be able to share, and how much, he's probably wanted to share that with somebody. And how often, sometimes that's maybe all somebody needs, is just to be asked that question, or just to be asked, what they're going through right now, or because there are sometimes when you ask people if they're happy and they say no. And I think it's even more incredible when they say no, but they're still more willing to go into detail as to why they're not. When most people in this day and age want to hide their emotions, want to put up on social media that everything's fantastic for them, but on the inside, it's not. And so if you don't mind sharing, what it's like to go into detail with the people who aren't happy? What is that like for you?
It's very educational, because usually what people are unhappy about has to do with their surroundings, their environment. For example, I spoke with a United States veteran, asked him if he was happy. He said no. When I said why, he said because he viewed, the divisiveness in the country. He was disappointed with it. He said, we fought for everybody to be together and safe, and right now everybody's not together. So that, that made him disappointed. So whenever people say no, it ends up being an educational experience for me, where I get to learn a little bit about what's wrong with the world and sometimes what's wrong with people. And I say that because I've also opened it up for people to submit their answers to me. Mm-hmm. And the way they do that is through sending a voice message through Instagram. So literally anybody could send me a voice message on Instagram answering the question, are you happy? And what I noticed was people will either feel more honest to tell the truth, or they'll have an opportunity to really think about it. And typically the answer is no. I'd say 70% of the voice messages submitted to me on Instagram are no. And I've listened to almost all of them, although it's very hard. But most of the people who are unhappy for the same reasons.
Interesting. And what reasons is that?
A lot of it has to do with insecurity, being in a toxic relationship. Most of it is, like, my opinion on what the thing that's most in common between the unhappy people is a lack of awareness of what they truly have. The fact that you could wake up, get off your bed, and have both feet hit the ground, that officially puts you in the top 1 percentile of the happiest people to ever live. The fact that you've got a healthy body, the fact that you've got a home, a bed, waking up, those things should, those are like the things that everybody should be happy about. But we allow external forces to bring us down. That doesn't mean we should be oblivious to be happy.
Yeah.
But it means you should place a higher priority on the important things in your life than you do on the insignificant things. For example, it is so easy to be afraid, angry, fearful about what you see on the TV. We talked about it earlier. It's also so easy to be angry about what somebody said about you online. And it's very easy to have those things bring down your happiness. But what's most important, where you should be placing the scale of your happiness, is on things in your immediate circle, within a 2-mile radius of where you are right now. Those are the things that should affect your happiness. Is mom okay? What's for dinner tonight? Who's picking up the kids? Is the laundry done? Are the test results back? Am I healthy? Those are the things you should be worried about. Those are the things that should be affecting your happiness. And then, if you feel like those are in a good place, perhaps your neighborhood, perhaps spread out to your community. And if you're still alive after doing all that, then go, run for mayor. Actually, not even run for mayor. Be head of the PTA, but focus on you, your family, your home, and then turn on the TV.
Yeah. Wow, man. Wow. And I'm so happy of what you just said. And because for me, I've been doing this series through my podcast, through Leo's Touch, with mental health, and I've had a few of my friends come on to the show, and a few people who I know talk about mental health, and talk about, you know, things that they're going through, like depression, anxiety, all these different things. And and I'm a personal trainer outside of doing podcasting, so I get quite a bit of conversation from my clients that they don't really tell anybody else. And one thing that I loved what you said is how we let external things dictate whether or not we're happy. And I did a podcast by myself about this topic, about renting your mind, and renting space in your
Oh,
mind
yep.
to tenants that aren't paying rent.
Yes,
You know,
exactly.
and
You're
and
living
I
rent
feel
free in your
very
head.
I feel very, very passionate about that, and everything you just said touches on that, and builds off of that, and gives people, you know, like an opportunity to be self-reflected. And so let me ask you this: why do you think it's so hard for a majority of people to have that self reflection or self awareness, even of just of their position in life, even just that they have air in their lungs, and to be thankful for that? Why do you think so many people find it or have such a hard time with that?
Well, it's interesting you say that because as a personal trainer, you know that if you want something like a fit body, a healthy system, it's hard. Nothing good comes easy. Of course it's hard. Somebody in the chat said, I want to do that, but it's hard. Of course it's hard. Nothing good comes easy.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some aspects of it that are easy. Turning off the TV, for one. Spending more time with family, less time online or on external things, easy. Just turn it off. Throw it out. Break the pipe, you know? And if you know, you know. But why is it so hard to appreciate the fact that we have air in our lungs and have that be the basis of our happiness? Perhaps because we were still developing when we got it, and we forgot that we didn't used to have it. And it's easy to forget that one day it will be gone. And if it won't be gone for you, it'll be gone for your friend or your mother or your sister.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes a death or a traumatic event kind of reminds us, oh, wow, this doesn't last forever. The sound of my mother will one day end. Or, my best friend's dish will one day no longer exist. He won't be able to cook it. These things that seem small will come to an end, and it takes a traumatic event for us to remember or to remind ourselves of that. Mm-hmm. But if you just try to take a second every day, do a little check, and it's easy to forget. I forget too, but sometimes you're just breathing, remembering, oh wow, this is special. Just being present in like 1 second a day really helps.
I love that. And that's something that I preach even with my clients. I've been practicing and learning about the Wim Hof breathing technique. I don't know if you've ever heard.
Time I've heard this. Tell me about this.
So like the Wim Hof breathing technique is something that, I've seen for so long. I've studied Wim Hof for quite some time. I've been taking cold showers myself for 4 years now. Just not because like he said to do it or something like that. It's just something that I tried, and it fortunately works because one, it demands you to breathe, and it demands you not to shallow breathe. And so I've been finding with my breathing techniques now, and teaching it to my clients, their workouts are better, their recovery is better, how they're thinking throughout the day is better. And it's crazy that that just breathing, something, again, like we were just talking about, that, or that you said, that maybe we had it when we were developing, and so now we don't quite value it as much as we would if we didn't have the ability to breathe just regularly or anything like that. But to be honest with you, I think once you start giving your breath more priority, not just, you know, how your breath smells, but what you do with the air in your lungs really does matter, for your overall well-being. And I think if a lot of people, who are listening right now, take a moment and take a big breath in and a big breath out and keep doing that 30 times in a row, you'll see a substantial difference. I think that's incredible.
30 times in a row, 30 deep breaths in a row.
30 deep breaths in a row. And the more and more breaths that you do, the more and more intense you get each and every breath. And then at the end, you hold your breath for as long as you can, and you let all of that air kind of build up. And then all of a sudden, you're feeling 1,000 times better than you did before, and you're thinking clearer, you're happy, you're just pleased with your situation, and all it took was a minute of breathing, and that'll get you there. So kind of building off of what we're talking about, how does it make you feel after you have like a really genuine deep conversation with somebody, that after you've just asked them if they're happy? Like how do you feel when you walk away from somebody after you've just had an incredible experience with them?
Have you ever had to present something?
Yes.
So I'm not very good at presenting things, but whenever I do, I get nervous. And then I present it, and at the end of it, I'm like, wait, what just happened? Is that over? I don't know if you've ever had that feeling, but if you're ever really nervous about something, job interview, whatever, when it happens, after it's over, it feels like it never happened. And yeah, I have to ask my friend, how did I look? Did I have a booger in my nose? Did I stutter? So when I interview people, I get so nervous that I'm like quiet the whole time, and I'm hoping I'm getting good stuff. And then it's only until like it's over that I'm like, okay, wait, what did he say? What did I get? And so I have to look at my footage, and that's like, I really don't remember. Like when I interview people, I don't remember what they said only until I look at it.
Yeah.
And oftentimes the things I think are really good and profound, I'm like, oh, I think he said that thing about his daughter, that might work. It's only until like I look at the footage, I'm like, oh, that's actually nothing, because he gave me this thing about his dog that I didn't even think about, and then I'll be like, oh, that's good, and then I'll upload it, and then somebody will notice something else, and then it'll go viral for some other reason. So, I can never predict anything. I can't remember how I feel after I interview people. Is like a big sigh of relief. I'm like, oh, okay, that's over. Good.
Yeah. That's awesome. So you basically go into like an extreme flow state pretty much.
100%. 100%. Great way to put it.
That's awesome. Because my roommate, he's a pretty good artist, and he spends a lot of time painting and stuff like that. And I asked him, and the reason why I'm bringing this up, because a lot of his responses on why he's doing it are very similar to what you said at the beginning. Is he said when he paints, or when he does his form of artistry, which I think you and what you're doing is a form of artistry, because it's beautiful. He says he doesn't remember what he goes through. He doesn't have anything in front of him for inspiration. He doesn't have notes of what he wants to draw or what he wants to create. He just goes into a total flow state. And if he and like just what you said, if he reflects back on some of his pieces of art, he'll be like, oh, I did this guy's hand really good, or I did this nose really good. And then he'll go and look at the piece, and he'll be like, wait, the shape of his head is incredible. That's way better than what I thought the hand looked like, or anything like that. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because no matter what kind of art you create, or whatever kind of content that you create, or what you're doing as a passion in your life, I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to tap into a flow state. Because sometimes like you said, most of the time, every time you go into a flow state, you don't remember at all what just happened, unless you record it, or unless you paint it, or unless it's there for you afterwards. And I think That's really interesting. So is there anything that you do before you go into it to kind of get yourself into a flow state, like a reassurance, kind of like a calm down? Like some people sometimes like take a whiff of something.
Oh,
They just smell, they smell a certain smell that brings them back to a period of time in their life where they can kind of go into that flow state. But what do you do for you to go into that flow state?
it's a great question. I don't like when you put it that way, the interview is like a self-induced flow state. I experience the flow state all the time when I'm working, like when I'm editing, when I'm shooting. But what I do to prep myself for every interview is breathe. I always do like a breathing thing before the interview. I don't consider it like an exercise. I just literally like slow down my breathing. I'm like, okay, it just helps me come to the present moment. It helps me relax. It distracts me from the other feelings. I just breathe and then I just get out my car. And it's all about getting out of the car. Stanley Kubrick, one of my favorite filmmakers, he said the hardest part about making a movie, now he's made some of the greatest movies to ever be made. He said that the hardest part of making a movie is getting out of the car. Now this guy revolutionized cinema. And so for him to say that, and what he meant by it, and he explains it in this interview, is that you have all these people waiting on you, all this tension, hoping everything goes right, all this nervousness. And the hardest thing is overcoming that and focusing on the main objective. So yeah, getting out of the car, breathing, it definitely helps. By the way, I interviewed the guy who coined the term flow state. He's a positive psychologist called Dr. Mihail Csikszentmihalyi. You might have seen the video, but I went to a positive psychology conference in California, and he was there giving a talk, and so I interviewed him. That's on my TikTok and on my YouTube as well. Like the full videos on my YouTube, and like short tease of it is on my TikTok. It's pretty interesting.
Oh, okay. I'll definitely check that out. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. Sorry.
No, you didn't interrupt me.
So since film has been such an inspiration for you, now what is your top 3 favorite movies and why?
Great question. My number 1 favorite film is Raging Bull. It's a 1980 Martin Scorsese film, and it kind of served as my film school. Even though I went to film school, I had to do like a big paper on any movie, and I picked this movie that I liked as a kid, Raging Bull, and then the paper, it was like a 10, 15-page paper. It forced me to really look into the movie, and I kind of like I analyzed the film deeply, and it ended up being like my film school. The movie experiments with black and white. It experiments with color. It experiments with blocking, set design, relationships. Everything that you'd want to learn about making a movie is in that movie. Like there's a scene, I won't get into it, but Raging Bull is one. The second one is Blue Valentine. Now it's 2010. Derek Cianfrance, the director, who currently has a HBO show coming out. That movie changed my perspective on filmmaking forever, because it taught me that the best moments of filmmaking are actually when the camera is off. And the process of filmmaking for me was then I want to capture that moment that people feel when they don't have to worry about a camera in their face, that they can just breathe and be themselves. That's like what I'm trying to do with Are You Happy? I'm trying to capture the truth of people. I want to remove the lies as much as possible. So that's one movie. And then probably another one of my favorite films is Children of Men. It's Iñárritu. Actually, I always confuse Iñárritu and Alfonso Cuarón. But that movie is like it's like a perfect film. Everything about it, from top to bottom, from the edge of the frame to the other edge of the frame, is completely thought out by the director. Every prop, every everything in the background. There's like scenes that shows a whole city street. Everything is thought about in that film. The pacing of the film is great. The music is amazing. The story is, wonderful. So yeah, those are like my three favorite films.
So with those three, because you said in the second movie that you mentioned that that's kind of what's giving you the focus or the purpose of getting the truth out of people, with Are You Happy? With those three films, do you ever try and integrate attributes of all three of those films in each and every time that you do an Are You Happy series or anything that you edit more or less into Are You Happy?
100%. 100%. I am a product of my favorite filmmakers. If you love Martin Scorsese, if you love Derek Cianfrance, you'll see them hopefully in my work. And with Derek, for example, he does this thing where he'll get, really nice camera, but he'll put a really long lens on it. So he could stand on one side of the room or on one side of the street, and the camera's way out of view. And then the action is happening on the completely other side of the street. And so he keeps that distance, but it's a really long lens. So, it's like, it's still a close-up. I've experimented with that with Are You Happy, where I stand on one side of the street and I have somebody records me on one side of the street. I have somebody interview me. I interview people on the other side of the street. I also try to make the camera the least important part of the entire thing. That's why a lot of the videos you've seen are framed poorly. Sometimes I'll get a nice shot in there, but a lot of times, like, it's framed like that. It's framed pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Because I want to shift the focus from the camera and onto the topic of the conversation. So sometimes I'll hold my camera down here and I'll point it up. Sometimes I'll just kind of hold it like I'm holding a pencil. I'll just flail it. And a lot of times when I'm having a conversation, I'll do the interview with the camera right in front of the face. And then I'll like get the nervousness out of the way for the person. And then I'll put it down and I'll be like, so how are you? Where are you from? I'll like have them calm down to have a normal conversation with me.
Yeah.
And then I'll find the opportunity to be like, by the way, are you actually happy? And then I just kind of turn the camera up toward them. So yeah, I try to find, those natural moments that way.
So then with that, do you find that, like, well, I mean, this should be a pretty obvious answer, but it's like, you find as soon as you put a camera in front of people, do you find them put on kind of like a fake face a little bit, or like they
100%.
just try and, yeah.
I mean, let's face it, it's inevitable. It's like, first of all, the camera has so much power. It's literally capturing your essence. So, of course, there's some deal of, putting on a show. But then there's also all the cultural implications. How is he going to use this? What is this for? All those things go into the mind of the person that's, hold on, sorry, I just lost you real quick. Let's get you back. What happened here? Okay, there you are. All of those things go into the mind of the person as I'm recording them. So for that reason, I try to make it as little of a deal as possible.
Interesting. Now, you mentioned a little bit about psychology, and that's something for me that just recently, just as of this year, I've started to take a lot more seriously and finding great interest in it, because for myself, I'm a personal trainer, but at the end of the day, I feel more like a therapist or a psychologist than I do, a personal trainer. And that's because for me, understanding my role and my position as an authority figure to people, I'm more or less understanding that I'm a support factor for people, and support factor coming into the gym, and people need to make that decision to come to the gym before they make the decision to lift up a weight, and therefore it's more of a psychological warfare than it is,
Mm-hmm.
physical warfare for a lot of people in that regard. So, what is your interest in psychology, and how does that play into what you're doing with Are You Happy?
To be honest, psychology wasn't really a huge part of what went into this. I have my own perhaps controversial views on psychology.
Okay.
And yeah, like I went to the positive psychology conference more to know, like, okay, all these people that claim that they're experts on happiness, experts on psychology. What if somebody flipped a question on them? Are you happy? And seeing the reaction on their face is pretty interesting because they're like, wait, am I happy? And I interviewed this woman and she's like, just throwing back. She's like, am I happy? She's like, well, I do. She's like, in all the quadrants of well-being, in the 4 quadrants of well-being, I feel like I've reached the peak in all of them. She's giving me this textbook answer. And it's so typical. It's so typical. Yeah.
And I appreciate you saying that, because I've worked with several psychologists, like, as they've been my clients, and I've found something very repetitive in their person, and that's being super analytical. If something doesn't, comply with everything that they've learned, then it's this unnatural phenomenon or something like that. And so I think, what you're doing, and the reason why I asked what your interest is in psychology, and I love what you said, is that it doesn't really factor in, because it creates a more natural sense in the way that you approach it, rather than trying or expecting or completely dissecting somebody's response for whatever they're going through, and studying them and knowing everything and diagnosing them basically right then and there. I love it because you come from, again, a human approach. Somebody literally standing right beside them in the line of a restaurant waiting to get their food, and asking them. And I think that's really, really incredible, and that's really different. And I love that, you went to literally what was it called?
A positive psychology conference.
And you ask people who are literally diagnosing people, and should know or do know all the ways of living happily and dealing with their issues and their problems, but you ask them if they're happy. I think that's fascinating, and I'm sure that there were people in that room that were stoked beyond belief, but also too, I find that most psychologists are more miserable, or not more miserable, but just in, like, they take in so much from their clients, and therefore they can't say they're happy, and so I find that really interesting, and I just wanted to ask you that question, because I do find a lot of what you're doing to be like an unorthodox approach to understanding or diagnosing somebody from a psychology standpoint. So
That's such a good way to put it. So, like, psychology as we know it is mainly based off of Sigmund Freud, who had his own very strange issues. So we're basing, I'm perhaps brilliant, perhaps a genius, but we're perhaps basing an entire way of thinking on the theories of a madman, perhaps. And by that, I mean, I've come to the realization that psychology is just a way of relieving guilt for people.
Mm.
Oh, you tend to break women's hearts. Well, tell me about your relationship with your mother. Oh, she was mean to you. Well, that's why. It's not your fault. Oh, you're abusive to your boyfriend. Well, you've been hurt in the past, right? So it's not your fault. There's some truth in that, but at the end of the day, it's a way for Sigmund Freud to relieve his own guilt about his own weird, just Google it, his own weird things going on.
Interesting.
And
So basically, it's just like placing blame on somebody else to make you feel better about yourself.
you could put it that way. And it's somebody else doing it. It's not, it's like a professional with a suit on and school and a degree behind their head.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think they post up their degrees? It's to reassure you that you're with a professional. And if a professional tells you that it's not your fault, then it isn't. And somebody like a psychologist might call my methods unorthodox, but I'm getting to the soul. And they are, they've built a whole academia off of searching the soul, understanding human behavior. But what I'm doing is I'm showing it. I'll say one more thing. The main rule in artistry, telling stories, filmmaking is show, don't tell. Instead of saying, when the man looked at the vase, it reminded him of his childhood and long lost summers. Instead of saying that, show the vase, cut to a shot of him, cut to a close-up of his eyes, do a flashback, show him running through a sprinkler during the summer as a kid, cut back to the vase, cut back to his eyes, and then now you've shown an idea. So I am showing human behavior. Psychology is telling.
I love that answer. That's pretty spot on. That's incredible. So last couple of questions here for you. Are you a big reader? Do you read a lot?
No, but I have been reading more than usual.
Okay.
I said my New Year's resolution last year was read a book a week for a year. I think I failed. I maybe got 10 books. But I read.
You've read 10 books already this year.
No, this was my failed goal of 2019.
So, okay.
Yeah, but I read some really great books along the way. Read A Million Pieces. I think it's called A Million Shattered Pieces. Or A Million Pieces, this guy's experience with being in rehab. And then through that book, A Million Little Pieces, I think it's called. Through that book, I found out about the book, The Tao Te Ching, which has become my all-time favorite book. I read Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I read Beloved, reading Sapiens now. So yeah, those are.
You do read it. So you do read a decent amount of books. And
I try. My sister is an avid reader, so compared to her, I've never read a book in my life.
Fair enough. I just found it interesting because, like, for myself, I only started, my first book that I ever read was when I was 17 years old. Football player, sports guy.
Yeah, I
books
get it.
are in the last thing on my to-do list.
I know fully formed adults with kids, a job, a house who have never read a book from start to finish.
It's a challenge. Like, it's honestly a challenge, especially with all the distractions that we got going on. But the reason why I asked that is just because I'm interested on if some of the books that you've read again have had influence on again your approach to Are You Happy and what you're doing with that.
That's a really good question, especially since a lot of the books that I read was during the shoot of Are You Happy? I think the Tao Te Ching, Tao Te Ching probably made me understand people better. Tao Te Ching is all about balance, understanding, letting go. They say, like, as soon as you start talking about it, it loses its meaning. So it's very hard for me to speak about. But there's a lot to do with letting go. And I think that a lot of the happiest people have found things like family, work, and passion, and everything else. I'm going to let it go. Everything I can't control, I'm going to let it go.
Interesting. And what is that book called?
The Tao Te Ching. It's one of the most ancient books, Eastern philosophy. It's where the term yin yang comes from. It's where the yin yang
Okay.
symbol comes from.
Interesting. Okay. I'll definitely have to check out that book. That's awesome.
Oh, it's really great. And it's also very easy to read. Very easy to read, very difficult to understand.
Interesting. And when is it from? Like, what year did it come out?
Oh, it like predates all like major historical texts.
Really?
Yeah. Tao Te Ching. Let's see. 4th century BC. Oh, actually, 2nd century BC, where it was unearthed. So I don't think it's actually not known when it was written.
Yeah.
It was unearthed, found the 2nd century BC.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Wow. So last question here for you as we wrap this up. For somebody, and I know you have tons of content on your Instagram, TikTok, and also YouTube that talks about this, but for somebody listening right now who is currently in a state where they can't say that they're happy, and they fall in that group of people who are struggling with a lack of self-awareness, what advice would you give to them, and what would you say to them to encourage them to become happy, if that's something that they ultimately want to be? From the guy who goes around asking people, are you happy? What would be your best advice as of right now to give to somebody who can't say they are happy?
Well, I'm no pro. Take my advice with a grain of salt. You know, I've interviewed hundreds of people on happiness, so you're welcome to look at their answer, and hopefully you'll find one that can shed some light. But to reiterate what I was saying earlier, focus on the things that are surrounding you. Like write down on a piece of paper all the things in your life that are putting you down, that are taking up real estate in your head, and remove anything that isn't you, family, security, safety, well-being. Remove all that. You know, turn off the TV. Like, don't think about what you see on the TV. Discern. I'm very rambly, so stick with me here. Discern the difference between truth and falsity. Discern what you've seen on TV between what you've actually experienced. You know, have a bunch of you see family running around in the background here. So, you know, surround yourself with family. And family doesn't have to be mother, brother, sister, daughter. Mm-hmm. It could be girlfriend, boyfriend, best friend, colleagues. You know, build your support system and keep them around. Give yourself to, you know, I'll end on this piece of advice. And if you have any more questions, fine. But in terms of the people that are struggling to find happiness, what I found is that the happiest people in the world have not always had the happiest lives. In fact, they've had a lot of suffering, but they've accepted suffering as a part of life. And they've used 3 things to help them get over those humps. And that's family, a cause, which could be a job you wake up to go to every morning, and a passion, something that puts you in that flow state, something that when you do it, time disappears.
I love that. I love that so much. Well, man, I just want to thank you so much for coming on to the show and for answering all my questions and really shedding some light on your mission and your goal and what you're doing and how it's impacting so many people all around the world, not just the people that you're asking these questions to, but the people who are watching it too as well, and receiving the content and receiving it in a way that really helps them open their minds and become more aware. And I hope and I pray that your journey keeps growing, and that you know what you do has more impact on inspiring other people to do what you are doing as well, and building that Are You Happy community, and for the people who want to create content like you two as well. I hope that all good things come to them, and again, just appreciate you coming on to my show and talking with me. I was, as soon as you responded, as soon as you said, yeah, let's set something up, I texted my friend who showed me your TikTok. I'm like, bro, you'll never guess I'm having him come on to the show, and so he was really excited about that, and as am I. So last couple things, where can people find you? So your Instagram handle, TikTok, and YouTube for when I upload this. Where can people find you?
Great question. First, I want to say thank you for all the kind words you just threw my way. This has honestly been one of my favorite podcasts that I've ever done.
Awesome.
Yeah, I swear to God, I could see why your clients also use you for, somebody to talk to. But don't, before we finish up and before I start talking about where people can find me, don't think you're getting away scot-free. So I have to ask you, are you happy?
Yes. Yes, I am. Now, why am I happy?
Sure.
Do you want me to do? I am actually very happy. And you know what? Just yesterday and this morning, I was in the hospital, and I was in the hospital because my tonsils were just massive. They were swelling, and I couldn't. And I all of last night couldn't sleep. Couldn't. I fell asleep for like 20 minutes, and I woke up gasping for air. And you said earlier in the episode that it usually takes a traumatic experience for people to come into a sense of awareness and appreciate the things around them. And I find it kind of interesting that it happens just before we talk about it in this episode. I've had some things happen to me in my life, as everybody has, that has made me really step back and appreciate the things that matter most in my life. And like what you said, is my mom okay? Like from your perspective. And that's something that I avidly think about every single day. Is my mom okay? Why? Because my mom has been there to make sure I'm okay every single time. The person who took me to the hospital this morning and yesterday was my mom, and to know that she's alive, that she's okay, that she cares about me, that she loves me, and that I love her, is one of the things that'll make me the happiest person in the world. And I can attest to that every single time. I'm a man of faith. I'm a man of God, and my mom has asked me. She said, "What for all the times that you've experienced God in your life, what were they, or what experiences were they?" And all three of those times were with my mom. My mom had a major influence on that. So like what you said, family is something that is the most meaningful thing to you. Family is something that's the most meaningful thing to me, and it makes me the happiest person in the world. My brother is going through a hard time right now, and I took him in for a little bit so he could alleviate some of the financial burdens that he's experiencing, and to see him come in, because before he would turn away anybody who wanted to help him, and because he didn't want to be a burden to people. But being able to look at my brother and say, dude, like, I love you to death, and this is what family does. Family takes people in, and like you said, it's not only mom, dad, brother, sister, it's friends. It's people that that you go through things with in life that sometimes you don't even go through with your family. And I've said this in an episode before on my podcast, but to answer your question and to wrap it all up, I'm very happy because I have a beautiful family. I have a healthy family. I have a beautiful home, a beautiful apartment that I can live in. I live in a nice city, even though in Winnipeg, if anybody knows Winnipeg, it gets freezing cold here, and it's only summer for like 2.5 months. But that's okay, because you know what? I get to wake up every morning with air in my lungs, a beat in my chest. I get to go about life and appreciate every little thing around me because I can see it. And there are people out there who don't have vision, aren't able to see things, and like that guy that you had, on your documentary, he was blind and the dude was stoked. The dude was happy. He didn't have his wife anymore, but the dude was happy. And that made me again reflect on my situation, reflect on myself, is that I can see I don't have the right not to be happy. I can breathe. I don't have the right not to be happy, and so yes, I'm very happy. and I thank you so much for asking me that question. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that with me.
Of course.
I'm just listening to you. Well, like I said, this was one of my favorite podcasts that I've ever done.
Good, man. I'm glad.
Yeah, that was really, really cool. If anybody that's listening wants to support the show, and thank you so much for supporting. It means a lot to me. You became a monthly subscriber, which is amazing. Literally for $3, that's how the donations are. You could support the show. It's happypeople.me/donation. And that basically keeps the lights on. Other than that, you could just look up Are You Happy on TikTok or Instagram and find us there, and go and peruse the hundreds of people that answer the happy question. So yeah.
Awesome, man.
Dude, well, so good to meet you.
Yeah, so nice to meet you too. And this is such a pleasure being able to talk to you on this platform too as well, and for you to ask me the question that I'm so fascinated by. So thank you so much for that. And I'll make sure to put all the links and everything like that to your accounts below, and I hope someday in the future that we can collaborate again, or do something together as well, or just to see both of our platforms grow and both of our messages grow as well. So again, man, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, man. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course.
All right, have a good day.
All right, man. Yeah, you too, brother.